The train hadn't even fully stopped when the shouting began, echoing across the lonely wooden platform like a warning no one wanted to hear, and right there, under the fading orange sky, an older woman clutched her swollen belly as if the world itself had turned against her in that single moment. You can almost picture it, can't you? The dust swirling, boots stomping, whispers spreading faster than wildfire, and everyone pretending not to see her pain, not to hear her quiet sobs breaking through the chaos. She wasn't just tired, she was abandoned, left behind like yesterday's trouble, too old, too pregnant, and apparently too inconvenient for anyone to care anymore. Now imagine standing there, watching strangers turn their backs, judging without knowing her story, as if her existence itself was a mistake written too late in life. And just when it felt like the night would swallow her whole, a shadow stepped forward from the edge of the crowd, slow, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. No one noticed him at first, because people rarely notice the ones who change everything until it's already done. He leaned close, his voice barely above a whisper, yet stronger than every cruel word thrown her way, and he said something that froze time itself. "You're mine now," he murmured, not as a claim of possession, but as a promise of protection that carried more weight than anything she had heard in years. And right there, folks, is where this story truly begins, not with abandonment, but with something far more powerful rising from the dust. You see, in the Wild West, survival wasn't just about strength, it was about who stood beside you when the world decided you no longer mattered. This woman, her name was Martha, had traveled miles chasing a hope that now seemed foolish even to her own heart. The child she carried wasn't just a burden, it was her last connection to a life she refused to regret, despite everything. But the townspeople didn't see courage, they saw scandal, whispers of judgment clinging to her like shadows in the setting sun. And the man who stepped forward, well, he wasn't dressed like a hero, no shining badge, no grand entrance, just a quiet presence with eyes that had seen too much. He offered his coat, simple gesture, but in that moment it meant warmth, dignity, and something she hadn't felt in a long time, respect. Now let me ask you something, how often do we miss the quiet heroes because we're too busy looking for loud ones? Because this man, he didn't argue with the crowd, he didn't raise his voice, he simply stood beside her, and sometimes that's the loudest statement of all. And slowly, something shifted in the air, not acceptance, not yet, but hesitation, doubt creeping into the judgment that had filled the platform. Martha looked at him with disbelief, because kindness had become so rare in her journey that it almost felt suspicious, like a trick she didn't understand. But there was no trick, just steady eyes and a calm voice telling her she wouldn't face the night alone anymore. He helped her step off the platform, each movement careful, respectful, as if she wasn't broken but simply weary from carrying too much for too long. And the crowd watched, unsure now, their certainty cracking under the weight of one man's quiet defiance. You've seen that before, haven't you, when one person dares to act differently and suddenly everyone questions themselves. That's the power of courage, not loud, not flashy, but deeply unsettling to those who chose silence. They walked toward the edge of town, away from the stairs, away from the whispers that still lingered like ghosts behind them. And for the first time since she was left there, Martha felt something unexpected rise in her chest, not fear, but hope. Now this stranger, his name was Daniel, and he carried his own past like a shadow that never quite left his side. He knew what it meant to lose everything, to be judged, to be cast aside as if your story had no value anymore. Maybe that's why he stopped, maybe that's why he spoke, because he saw in Martha something the others refused to see. Not weakness, not shame, but resilience carved deep into her spirit like lines in weathered wood. He brought her to a small cabin at the edge of town, nothing fancy, but safe, and sometimes safe is all you need to start again. And as the night settled in, the world outside grew quiet, but inside that cabin, a new chapter was beginning. He lit a lantern, its soft glow filling the room, pushing back the darkness just enough to make space for something better. And Martha, sitting there, finally allowed herself to breathe without fear tightening around her chest. Days passed, and slowly, word spread, not the cruel whispers from before, but something different, something softer, something curious. People began to wonder, who was this man who stood against the crowd without saying a word? And more importantly, why did his actions feel heavier than all their judgments combined? Martha grew stronger, not just physically, but in spirit, her laughter returning in small, fragile pieces that Daniel never rushed. He didn't ask for her story right away, because he understood that some wounds need silence before they can find words. And when she finally spoke, it wasn't with shame, but with honesty that carried the weight of everything she had endured. She told him about betrayal, about promises broken, about being left behind when she needed someone the most. And he listened, really listened, not to respond, not to fix, but simply to understand. You know, sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone isn't advice, it's attention, it's presence, it's letting them know they matter. And Daniel gave her that without expecting anything in return, no conditions, no hidden intentions. As the time came closer for her child to be born, the town began to change, slowly, quietly, almost reluctantly. The same people who turned away now started leaving small things by the cabin, food, blankets, gestures of guilt perhaps, or maybe growth. Because when one person chooses kindness, it has a way of spreading, even among those who resisted it at first. And Martha noticed, not with bitterness, but with a quiet understanding that people can change, even if it takes time. The night of the birth arrived with a storm, thunder rolling across the sky like a warning and a promise all at once. Inside that small cabin, Daniel stayed, steady and calm, as Martha fought through pain with a strength that refused to break. And when the child finally cried out, loud and full of life, it was as if the storm itself paused to listen. A new beginning had arrived, not just for her, but for everyone who had witnessed her journey. Daniel held the child gently, not as an owner, but as someone who chose to stand where others had walked away. And Martha, exhausted but smiling, realized that being left behind had led her exactly where she needed to be. Because sometimes, what feels like the end of your story is actually the beginning of something greater than you imagined. And that whisper, "You're mine now," wasn't about control, it was about belonging, about being seen when the world refuses to look. So next time you see someone standing alone, remember this story, remember that one small act can change everything. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, or feel, or remember something important, then don't just scroll away. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice matters here, just like every story we tell together matters.